If your hydrangea gives you healthy green leaves every summer but few flowers, or none at all, there is a very good chance you are causing it yourself with a pair of shears at the wrong time of year. Pruning a hydrangea at the wrong moment is the single most common reason these plants fail to bloom, and it is done by careful, well-meaning people who believe they are helping. So let me give you the secret to a spectacular bloom right at the start, because it is not a technique or a product. The secret is that there is no single correct way to prune a hydrangea. There are 6 different types, and they fall into 2 completely different groups that behave in opposite ways. Treat one group the way you would treat the other, and you remove every flower before it opens. Knowing which type you have and understanding how it works is the whole difference between a plant covered in blooms and a bare green bush. Almost everything that goes wrong with hydrangea pruning comes down to that one confusion. People follow a piece of advice that is perfectly correct for one kind of hydrangea, apply it to a different kind, and quietly lose their flowers. Then they blame the plant, or the weather, or themselves, and never suspect the shears. This video is about understanding the plant, not memorizing a procedure. First, I will explain the one thing that everything depends on, the difference between old wood and new wood, because once it clicks, the whole subject makes sense. Then I will show you how to recognize which of the 6 types you have. Then I will walk through each type and explain how it flowers and what that means for when you cut it. And I will finish with the honest limits, the things pruning cannot fix, because it gets blamed for a lot that is not its fault. By the end, you will understand your hydrangea well enough to know what it needs without looking anything up. Not because you memorized a set of rules, but because you understand why the plant does what it does. Take your time with this one. It is the most useful thing you will ever learn about this plant, and understanding it turns a frustrating shrub into the best one on the street. But first, the one idea the whole subject rests on: the difference between old wood and new wood. Every hydrangea flowers in one of 2 ways, and this single idea is the foundation for everything else. A hydrangea blooms either on old wood or on new wood, and which one it does explains its entire behavior. Old wood means the plant makes next year's flower buds late in the current season, in late summer and autumn, on the stems that are already standing there. Those buds form, and then they wait on the plant all through winter, dormant, until spring wakes them. So on an old wood hydrangea, the flowers you will enjoy next summer already exist right now as tiny invisible buds on the plant. The wood is a year old by the time it blooms, which is where the name comes from. New wood means the opposite. The plant makes its flower buds in spring. On fresh growth it pushes out that same year, and then flowers on that brand new growth a few months later. Nothing waits over winter. The whole cycle, bud to bloom, happens within a single season, on wood that did not exist in the spring. That one difference explains everything about pruning. On an old wood plant, next year's buds are sitting exposed on the stems all through the cold months. So anything that removes those stems in autumn, winter, or early spring removes the flowers with them. That is why old wood hydrangeas are pruned in summer, right after they bloom, in the short window before they set the new buds, or simply left alone. On a new wood plant, there are no buds waiting over winter to lose. So the plant can be cut back hard while it is dormant and simply grows fresh flowering wood in spring. That is why new wood hydrangeas are cut in late winter, before growth begins. So the very same action, cutting a hydrangea back in late winter, is either completely harmless or totally destructive, and the only thing that decides which is whether your plant blooms on old wood or new wood. That is the reason you cannot make a sensible decision about any hydrangea until you know which of the 2 it is. Which is where we go next, because recognizing your type is the thing everything else depends on. Before anything else, you need to know which of the 6 types you have, and the good news is that they are not hard to tell apart once you know what to look at. The flowers and the leaves give it away. Flower shape sorts most of them instantly. Big round balls or flat plates put you in one camp. Cones, pointed clusters shaped like an ice cream cone or a lilac, put you in another. That cone shape is the single most useful thing to spot because it means a panicle hydrangea, and panicles behave in the opposite way to the round-flowered ones. Here are the 6. The big leaf is the classic hydrangea most people picture, with either big round mophead pom-poms or flat lace caps ringed with florets, in blue, pink, or purple, with glossy, thick leaves. It is the most common and the one most often pruned wrong. The mountain hydrangea is a smaller, daintier lace cap version of the big leaf, easy to mistake for one, which does not matter because the two behave identically. The panicle is the one with the cone-shaped heads, usually opening white or lime and often aging to pink on a big, vigorous plant, and it is the toughest and most cold-hardy of the group. The smooth hydrangea, the Annabelle type, has huge round white balls on a softer, lower plant, and it is native to North America. The oak leaf is the easiest of all to spot, because its leaves are shaped like large oak leaves and turn brilliant red in autumn, with cone-shaped white flowers and peeling, cinnamon-colored bark. And the climbing hydrangea is the one that climbs, a vine that scales walls and trees with flat white lace-cap flowers, unmistakable because nothing else in the group does that. Now sort those 6 into the 2 camps that explain everything. Old wood, big leaf, mountain, oak leaf, and climbing. New wood, panicle and smooth. Those 2, panicle and smooth, are the ones you can cut hard in late winter. The other 4 are the summer-only or leave-alone plants. If you are ever unsure, there is one observation that settles it. Watch when your plant flowers, and on what. Blooming on old established stems in early summer means old wood. Blooming on the tips of brand new growth later in summer means new wood. The plant will tell you what it is if you watch it for a season. Now let us take each type in turn, starting with the most common and most misunderstood, the big leaf. The big leaf hydrangea, the mop heads and lace caps, with the mountain hydrangea right beside it, because the two behave the same. These bloom on old wood, and this is the group people harm most often, so it is worth understanding well. Remember what old wood means here. This plant makes next year's flower buds in late summer, on the current stems, and then carries them through winter. Which means that for most of the year, next year's flowers are already on the plant, sitting there invisibly. Everything about how you treat a big leaf follows from that single fact. So the most important thing to understand is that this plant wants to be largely left alone. A healthy big leaf that is a good size for its spot barely needs cutting at all, and the less you do to it, the more it flowers. The instinct to tidy it back every year is precisely what leaves so many people with a lush green bush and no blooms, because every time they cut it, they are removing the buds it was carrying. When there is a genuine reason to cut it, the timing is what matters, and there is really only one safe window. Right after it finishes flowering in summer, before it sets next year's buds in the weeks that follow. Tidying, shaping, removing an old stem or two to refresh a crowded plant, all of that belongs in that summer window and nowhere else. Once autumn arrives, the buds are forming, and the plant should not be cut again until after it blooms next year. The thing that quietly destroys these plants is a hard cut in the dormant season, when the garden looks bare and it seems like the natural time to cut everything back. On a big leaf, that dormant season cut removes every flower bud it was holding, and the plant responds next spring by growing back lush and green and completely flowerless. The gardener sees a healthy plant and cannot understand why it will not bloom, and never connects it to the winter tidy-up. One honest note that matters later. There are modern reblooming big leaf varieties, the endless summer group and others like it, that flower on both old and new wood. Those are more forgiving, and I will come back to them at the end. But the classic old-fashioned mop heads and lace caps behave strictly as old wood. Now, a quick word, because this whole problem of knowing what you have and when it wants cutting is exactly what this channel exists to solve. Quick one, right here, because we are about to go through the rest of the types, each behaving in its own way, and I do not want you standing in the garden trying to remember all of it. You should be able to check it in a few seconds for your specific plant. So I made exactly that. It is called the Hydrangea Mastery Guide, and this pruning confusion is the whole reason it exists. It walks you through recognizing all 6 types, with the identifying features laid out so you can match your plant with confidence. And at the center of it is a prune by type calendar, a simple reference that tells you, for the hydrangea you actually own, when it wants cutting and when to leave it be, so you are never again guessing at the wrong moment. Everything this video explains, in a form you can hold in one hand at the plant. It also clears up the questions that trip up the same people, because they travel together. The real reason the color changes, which is not the pH, whatever you were told. The 5 most common myths that cost people a whole season. And the honest limits, laid out plainly. 29 pages, $27, an instant PDF you can open on your phone in the garden, a 7-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the description at waltgreer.com. And it ends the way this channel always does, with the truth included. 4 of the 6 types cannot change color no matter what you pour on the soil. Fertilizer will never fix a hydrangea that will not bloom. And no amount of careful cutting saves a plant whose buds were killed by cold. A guide that only tells you what to do is only half a guide. Now, back to the types, and the second one behaves in almost the opposite way to the big leaf, the panicle. The panicle hydrangea, the one with the cone-shaped flower heads, behaves in almost the opposite way to the big leaf, and understanding why makes it the easiest of all to get right. Because it flowers on new wood, the panicle makes its buds in spring. On growth it produces that same year. So there is nothing on the plant over winter to protect, and nothing to lose by cutting it while it is dormant. This is the plant that actually benefits from a proper cut each year, where the big leaf mostly wants to be left alone. It is pruned in late winter, before it starts into growth, which is the exact time you must never touch a big leaf. That contradiction is the whole reason knowing your type matters so much. The reason a cut helps this plant is worth understanding, because it is not about tidiness. A panicle left completely alone still flowers, but it tends to spread its energy across a lot of smaller heads on a crowded tangle of stems, and those stems can grow thin and flop under the weight of the blooms. Cutting it back each winter concentrates the plant's energy into fewer, stronger stems, which gives you larger, more impressive flower heads, and it builds a sturdier framework underneath that holds those blooms upright instead of letting them sag. The idea to hold on to is that you are pruning back to a framework, not to the ground. You let the plant build a permanent woody structure at roughly the height you want it, and then each late winter you shorten the previous year's growth back toward that structure. Over the years that gives you a strong, well-shaped shrub carrying big flowers at a good height. You have real control here. Harder for bigger blooms on a more compact plant, lighter for a taller one, which is a flexibility most hydrangeas simply do not give you. The only real mistake with a panicle is neglect over many years, which lets it become a congested mass of weak, twiggy growth carrying smaller and smaller flowers. A yearly winter cut is what keeps it vigorous and spectacular. Now, the third type is also new wood, but it takes that idea to an extreme, and it comes with one famous problem: the smooth hydrangea. The smooth hydrangea, the Annabelle type with the huge round white balls, is also a new wood plant, but it takes that idea to its limit, and it comes with one famous problem worth planning around. Like the panicle, it flowers on fresh spring growth, so nothing waits over winter, and it can be cut while dormant without losing blooms. But the smooth hydrangea can take the most drastic treatment of the whole group. You can cut an Annabelle right down almost to the ground in late winter, and it will send up strong new stems and flower magnificently the very same summer. It is the one hydrangea you can genuinely cut nearly to the ground and be rewarded for it. Now the famous problem, and it is the reason you might choose not to cut it that hard. Annabelle is notorious for flopping. Those flower heads are enormous and heavy, and if the stems holding them are too soft or too tall, the whole plant sprawls to the ground the first time it rains, leaving the blooms lying in the mud. And here is the part people do not expect. Cutting it all the way down every year can actually make the flopping worse, because the plant regrows tall, soft, whippy stems that simply cannot hold those giant heads up. So the understanding to take away is about the trade-off. Cutting to the ground gives you the freshest growth, but the weakest support. Leaving a low framework of sturdier, older stems, roughly knee height rather than a few inches, gives the new growth something stronger to rise from, and those thicker lower stems help hold the blooms upright. You still get the big flowers, with far less collapse. If you love the tallest possible plant and do not mind staking it, cut it lower. If you want it to stand up on its own, that low framework is the honest answer, and it beats fighting the flop all summer. Now, the three types most guides forget about entirely because they stop at the famous ones: the oak leaf, the mountain, and the climbing hydrangea. Now the three types most guides forget because they stop at the famous ones: the oak leaf, the mountain, and the climbing hydrangea. All three bloom on old wood, so all three follow the same logic as the big leaf. They are cut in summer, right after flowering, or barely at all. The oak leaf, with its big oak-shaped leaves and brilliant autumn color, is a plant to leave largely alone, and that is genuine advice rather than laziness. Its whole beauty is in its natural shape, its handsome peeling bark, and that fall foliage, and heavy cutting ruins all of it. It blooms on old wood, so it carries next year's buds through winter like the big leaf. If it genuinely needs shaping, that happens right after it flowers in summer, and lightly. An oak leaf allowed to grow into its natural form is far more beautiful than one that is regularly cut back. So with this plant, understanding it mostly means understanding to leave it be. The mountain hydrangea is simple because you already understand it. It is a close cousin of the big leaf, a daintier lace cap, and it behaves identically. Old wood, cut in summer after flowering if at all, and otherwise left alone. Everything you understand about the big leaf applies here unchanged. It tends to be a little hardier and more forgiving, but its behavior is the same. The climbing hydrangea, the vine that scales walls and trees, also blooms on old wood, and it has one quirk worth knowing. It is slow to settle in, often taking a few years before it flowers well. So, in its early life, patience matters far more than cutting. Once it is established and has filled its space, it needs very little. If it starts reaching into gutters or windows, you rein it back right after it flowers in summer, for the same reason as all the old wood types, because a hard cut in winter or spring takes that year's flowers with it. So all three of these are quiet, low-maintenance old wood plants, and understanding them really comes down to the same instinct. Cut little, cut in summer if at all, and never in the dormant season. Now, before the honest limits, one idea that ties the whole thing together, because it is the thing to actually remember. Before the honest limits, here is the one idea that ties everything together. Because if you remember nothing else, remember this. The same cut can save one hydrangea and ruin another, and the only thing that changes is the plant. A hard cut in late winter is exactly what a panicle or a smooth hydrangea wants, and it is the precise thing that destroys a big leaf or an oak leaf. Nothing about the cut itself is right or wrong. It is right or wrong only in relation to how that particular plant flowers. That is why there is no universal rule for pruning hydrangeas, and why every piece of advice you have ever heard was only true for some of them. which leads to the single most useful habit you can adopt, and it is one of restraint. When you are not sure what your plant is or what it wants, do not cut it. A hydrangea that is left unpruned will still flower perfectly well. A hydrangea that is cut at the wrong time may give you nothing. So when in doubt, the safe mistake is always to leave it alone, because doing nothing costs you a little tidiness, while doing the wrong thing costs you the whole show. There is one exception that holds true across every type, and it is common sense. Wood that is genuinely dead, broken, or diseased can come off at any time, on any hydrangea, because it carries no flowers worth keeping and only harms the plant. The timing rules are all about protecting flower buds, and dead wood has none to protect. Now the honest part, because pruning gets blamed for problems that are not its fault, and asked to fix things it simply cannot. Now the honest part, because pruning gets blamed for a lot that is not its fault, and asked to fix things it cannot. If your hydrangea will not bloom, the wrong pruning is the most likely reason, but it is not the only one, and cutting it correctly will not fix the others. The most common reason that has nothing to do with pruning is winter cold killing the buds. On the old wood types, those buds sit exposed on the stems all winter, and in a hard winter, or after a false spring where a warm spell is followed by a sharp freeze, the cold simply kills them. The plant then leafs out green and healthy in spring, because the leaf buds lower down survive, but it produces few or no flowers, because the flower buds died over winter. No pruning brings those back. If this happens to you every year, the real answer is not a better cut. It is either sheltering the plant through winter or growing a type whose buds are not exposed to the cold at all, a panicle or a smooth, which make their buds fresh in spring and so cannot lose them to winter. The second reason is too much shade or simply the wrong spot. A hydrangea in deep shade grows lush and leafy and flowers poorly no matter how well it is cut, because it does not have the light to fund flowers. Pruning cannot add light. The fix is the right position, not the shears. The third is too much nitrogen feed, which pushes the plant to make leaves at the expense of flowers, giving you a big, healthy bush with hardly any blooms. Cutting does nothing for that either. The fix is to stop feeding it nitrogen. And here is the re-blooming wrinkle I promised. The modern re-bloomers, like the Endless Summer group, flower on both old and new wood, which makes them far more forgiving of both bad timing and hard winters, because even if the old wood buds are lost to cold, the plant can still flower on its fresh spring growth. For these, very little is needed at all, and you get flowers even after a brutal winter. If you have fought for years with an old-fashioned mop head that never survives your winters, a rebloomer is very often the honest solution. So cutting correctly for your type matters, and it is the most common fix for a hydrangea that will not bloom. It is simply not the only one, and understanding the difference saves you from taking the shears to a plant whose real problem was never the pruning at all. Let me pull the whole thing together. Before we finish, send this to one person you know whose hydrangea gives them leaves and no flowers. Just the link. There is a very good chance they are cutting it at the wrong time, and understanding this is everything they need to fix it. Here is the whole thing, pulled together. The secret to a spectacular bloom is not a technique. It is understanding which of the 6 hydrangeas you have, and working with the way that type flowers instead of against it. Everything rests on old wood versus new wood. The old wood types, the big leaf mop heads and lace caps, the mountain, the oak leaf, and the climbing, carry next year's flowers on their stems all through winter. So they are cut lightly in summer, right after they bloom, and never in the dormant season, or the flowers go with the stems. For most of them, the honest truth is that the best thing you can do is very little. The new wood types, the panicle with its cones and the smooth Annabelle with its white balls, make their flowers fresh every spring. So they are cut in late winter while dormant, and they reward it, The panicle with bigger blooms on a strong framework, the Annabelle the same, as long as you leave it enough of a base to hold those heavy heads up. The same cut helps one and ruins another, and the only thing that changes is the plant. So when you are unsure, leave it alone, because an unpruned hydrangea still flowers, and a wrongly cut one may not. And be honest about the limits, because if the cold takes your buds every winter, or the plant sits in deep shade, or it is swamped with nitrogen, the shears were never the answer. Understand your type though, and work with it, and you remove the single biggest reason a hydrangea refuses to bloom, and you turn a frustrating green bush into the plant the whole street stops to look at. Subscribe and hit the bell and stick around. We do this the honest way here in the Forgotten Knowledge Library. One plant, explained properly, told straight, including the limits and the times. The answer is to do nothing at all. It is free, and it always will be. And drop a comment telling me which type you have, and whether you have been cutting it at the right time, because I suspect this video just answered a question a few of you have had for years. Next time, another plant where the secret turns out to be understanding what you are actually growing. I will see you in the next one.